Recency bias is more than prevalent in MMA. The cognitive bias is precisely what fans and pundits' perspective on a fighter is based on. When it was first announced that Sugar Sean O'Malley would be fighting Petr Yan at UFC 280, the general consensus was that he didn't do enough to deserve the title eliminator fight. It wasn't only the fact that he didn't deserve the fight, but also a foregone conclusion that he was going to take a beating at the hands of the former bantamweight champion. Something O'Malley didn't really get a lot of credit for in that one was the fact that he did not have to jump that far up the ladder yet. He had a lot more leverage than your average UFC fighter and was in a position to be a lot more selective in his matchups he was taking and choose to go with a slower build-up if he wanted. Odds makers had O'Malley at a plus 220, to Jan's at a minus 275, and it seemed as though between the fans and the pundits, next to nobody was giving Sugar a chance to win that fight. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I've been wrong plenty over the years. But in the week leading into that fight with Yan, I went back and watched all of O'Malley's UFC fights and came away being certain that at the very least, he was going to be very competitive in that fight. I shot an episode to that effect heading into that contest, talking about other fightings from rewatching his previous contests, and in it, I talked about how my biggest takeaway from rewatching these fights in chronological order was the apparent growth and confidence that Sugar exuded in each outing. Sugar bet on himself based purely on the belief he and his team had in his abilities and beat Yan when nobody thought he had a chance. And now the main event marquee fight he's been envisioning for all these years is here. UFC 292, Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is without question one of the most underappreciated fighters on the roster. For whatever reason, he just doesn't seem to get the recognition from the fan base for how great he really is. He is the betting favorite heading into this fight, and for all very understandable reasoning. However, there are a number of things about this fight that I feel like are in O'Malley's favor. The timing of it being one of the most key of them all. What I mean by timing is that after betting on himself against Yan and it paying off, I believe the growing confidence that Sugar's demonstrated in every outing could very well be peaking when the octagon lands in Beantown this weekend for UFC 292. In contrast with Aljo, who I feel like may not be in the best place right now. I'm not suggesting deep-seated inner turmoil, but from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like his situation heading into this fight is conducive for optimal motivation and focus. His relationship with the UFC has been a little contentious over the years, and accepting this fight in the first place was a bit of an ordeal. I also can't help but think about AJ talking about how this is more than likely his last fight at 135. I wouldn't say it's akin to a fighter who's talking about retirement with one foot out the door already, but I do feel like there's something to be said for the fact that he's publicly stating his future is not in this weight class. Sterling has been forthcoming about the weight cut being a lot tougher as he gets older, and he's also stated that he's looking to step aside so his teammate Merab can realize his chance at a UFC championship. An amalgamation of all these things makes me question if he's going to be at his best this weekend. Whereas there's no doubt in my mind where Sugar's head is, and if the trajectory of his confidence so far is any indication, the challenger will be heading into this fight with a mindset that may very well be enough to supersede any skill disparity against Aljo, should there be one. Not to mention the fact that I've yet to see anyone Sugar has faced not bite on his feints. And if O'Malley is able to come out as composed as we're accustomed to seeing him, I think his feinting coupled with his overall quickness and footwork is going to keep the contest upright a lot longer than people are expecting, allowing him plenty of opportunities to find the chin, which is something he has a really great track record of doing. Sugar is fast, has very clean boxing, is wicked accurate, and powerful. He also is very good at knowing when to be aggressive and when to prioritize technique over power. He does sometimes respond to getting hit with aggression, which does put him in harm's way and against Aljo at risk of being taken down. But the willingness to take those types of risks when in the trenches speaks to his level of confidence, which is the very thing I think is responsible for taking him as far as he's gotten. And for some reason, all this week, I find myself thinking about the Ryan Hall versus Ilia Topuria fight, and how Topuria knew well ahead of time the types of positions he was going to be in that fight against the crafty leg lock specialist. Topuria very clearly focused and prepared on a game plan to be in those positions and to do damage while in them. With the very forward thinking of head coach Tim Welch and O'Malley's ability to perform and make good decisions when the lights are on, I just get this feeling that they put a heavy emphasis on catching Sterling when he's on the way in for that inevitable takedown attempt. It doesn't mean that he'll have success doing it, but I think they probably got some tricks up their sleeves, and that there's a real possibility that the championship edition of the Sugar Show is right around the corner.